Okay, so here we are, we're down at Irchester on one of my Syndicate venues. It's in the Nene Valley, sort of Northampton area. It's absolutely stunning place, it's beautiful, it's one of my favourite tickets. I spent a year, all the sort of last season if you like, on the smaller car park lake at the top end, and I've now moved on to the bigger lake. It's only my fourth trip on here. The first three were all successful, but I will say this week it's 32 degrees today and it's going to be 33 tomorrow, so we're bang up against it. But I've had a wander around. I've seen a couple of fish cruising near a big weed bed out there. I've chucked a couple of rigs out for now. I'm going to just sort of see how the day progresses, and in between times going to sit down, have a little chat about how I approach summer fishing, rigs, baiting, mobility, etc. But first things first, we're going to have a cup of tea, chill out, and then we'll catch up in a little while. Right, we have a brew in hand. We have the comfortable high chair. Notice I say high chair and not low chair. It's age related. Why we all sat with our bums on the floor back in the day, I have no idea, because this is just absolute heaven. But yes, like I said, a little bit about why I've chosen where I am at the moment and what I look for in the summer in a swim. Now, obviously, the first thing you're looking for is actual fish location, isn't it? It's not always the be all and end all of summer fishing. Depends what time of day you're looking, because if you're looking in like now, it's 3:30 in the afternoon. Like I said, it's over 30 degrees. If you're finding fish now, all well and good. You might do a bit of floater fishing, bit of zig fishing, whatever, or if they're in the edge, bit of stalking. Doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be the best spot for bites. For example, when I was just next door here on the car park lake, it's only a 5-acre lake, real tricky. I was doing quite well last summer, this time last year, getting the odd one on the top, getting the odd one in little holes in the weed and what have you, but I wasn't catching anything at night. So I started getting up proper early, about 3:45 in the morning, and just watching the water. And one morning, just see some fizzing in one little spot where I hadn't fished. I thought it was all weed, so I just let it play out. Later in the day, had a good old feel about in there and found a little clear spot in amongst solid weed. So I put a little bit of bait on it, not a lot, just I don't know, half a kilo of bait or whatever on that spot. Up again the next morning, watching out there, and there was a little bit of fizzing and one just stuck his head out, so I knew it weren't tench, I knew it was carp. That single sighting over the next 3 weeks led to, I think it was either 5 or 6 of the originals. There was only 18 in there, and I had half a dozen of them through that one early morning sighting, and that was just by locating the actual feeding areas. So where you find them in the middle of the day doesn't necessarily mean that's where you're going to get bites at night. But on here, so I haven't been on here long. This is my 4th trip. Not that in tune with it yet, but I will get there. And not everyone gets that chance to go, week after week after week for 2 or 3 nights. I understand that. A lot of people are a single night, and you can't build up that picture. So on just the look of it and what you see and what you get when you turn up and walk around maybe in the middle of the day, look for areas that have got weed beds nearby. In the summer, the fish spend a lot of the time in the weed. You get different oxygen levels in the main lake and in the open water and in the weed, and they change throughout the day and night. So I'd look for something with a bit of cover nearby. Maybe, if you're on a gravel pit like this, something with a bar that might be used as a transit route. Fish use those like roads to get from A to B. Rather than tucking yourself away in a corner, unless you're seeing a lot of fish in there and hoping they turn up. If you're fishing on spec, I'd go for somewhere like this. There's 3 points on this lake and I'm on the second one. So, that tells you I'm fairly central. I've got a small channel out to my left, quite a way out, 80 yards out, that goes round a big reed bed into another section of the lake. And I've got the third section of the lake up this way. So if fish move from one end to the other, they're coming through this swim. So these sort of ambush points and pinch points, if you like, always a good bet if you're just doing a quick session somewhere, rather than losing yourself in a nice little romantic corner somewhere where you haven't seen anything hoping they turn up. I'd rather go for something that's got some sort of a transit route through it, hoping for fish going up one way, coming back down the other. And like I say, something near a bit of weed. So that's all I've gone on to start with. There is a swim opposite, a bit further down, which has a big plateau on it where I fished the last 2 sessions, and I've caught both times. I think I've had 4 or 5 fish off of it, whatever. I've had some fish off of it. I could have just gone back in there and just repeated, but I wouldn't learn anything about the lake. So I really want to learn more about different areas of the lake. So for me on this trip, it's a bit more exploratory. I'm hoping that all those things I've put together to make me choose this swim all sort of come to play, and I catch one basically, or maybe even 2. But like I say, it's not going to be right at the moment, but maybe this evening or tonight, or if not early hours in the morning. Classic time at this time of year, and we're in August at the moment. The first 2 hours are light, which is, it's pushed on a little bit now. You know, in the middle of summer it's 4:30. Now it's probably 5:15, something like that. So between sort of 5 and 7, your absolute classic bite time for August. So we shall see. Right, I mentioned earlier about weed fishing, you know, near weed. I like the cover of weed and the different oxygen levels and what have you, but there's sort of quite a lot more to weed fishing and presenting your bait, obviously. You know, summer, there's weed everywhere, but there's all sorts of different types of weed, and they can tell you a big story about what you're finding out there. So I'm fishing out about 15 wraps, which is 60 yards in old money, you know, and I'm pulling back various sorts of weed like this, blanket weed, silkweed, whatever you want to call it. Lays very low to the bottom. This is quite fresh, so not too bad at all, but I wouldn't want to fish over it. When it dies off, a lot of this lake is covered in last year's blackweed, which is horrible, stinking, gets this like sort of purpley black silt in there as it's trying to break down. I don't think it's got enough sort of oxygen or whatever to break down fast, so it becomes this stinking horrible mess, which you want to avoid at all costs. This will mask your rig and blanket everything. It's not ideal, but that tells you that you're fishing on or around something, some sort of a feature in general. There's another weed in here, which is, I believe its proper name is bistort. I've come across it in a few lakes, not an awful lot. We've called it kelp in the past as well. It's very, very thick, ropey, strong, leafy weed, and that's what most of that big bed of weed is out there and all down here in the margins. It can be a bit tricky if you get fish in it, to be honest, you know, to get them back out, because it is very strong if they clump it all together. But again, this is more likely to be growing around the edges, and if you see a bed of it out in the lake, there's a fair chance that you've got a shallower area either under it or next to it. You know, it's not going to root in the hard sand and gravel that you might want to be fishing, but it's going to root all around it. So if you get a bed of this out in the lake, you can see it sticking out the top. You get little tops like that will stick out. And there's a circular hole nearby, well worth investigating, because that might be the sort of spot that, you know, you want to be on. I'm very much a spot angler. Whether I'm fishing, no matter what weed I'm fishing near, I want to be near it and not in it. Now, I know a lot of people do it different. They want to put a bag in the weed or a chod over the top or a hinge or whatever. That's not what I do. I don't like chod rigs. I'm not particularly keen on hinge rigs either. I'd prefer to find a bit of the bottom that has been fed on and is clear because it's been fed on. To me, that's somewhere that the fish are already visiting looking for food. So I'm willing to cast and cast and cast near weed until I get not only a donk. A lot of people think as soon as you get a donk, that's it, that's the spot. But weed can grow on hard ground the same as it can grow on soft ground. Not as much, but some weeds do, like your blanket weed, your silk weed, can be over those real hard areas and they can be horrible. So I want a donk. And then on braid, I always feel with braid, mono, you just don't feel enough. You know, on here, you're not allowed to use braid, but you are on a marker. So I want to feel a donk because it hits the spot. And then I want a little tiny slide back to let me know it's clear. But the most important thing when you pull back, when you're fishing near weed, is not just to pull back and think, oh, that's clear. It's to stop and put the rod tip back forwards. If you feel the lead go donk, that weren't a clear spot, you're off the bottom. If you're on a clear spot, that lead should not break contact with the bottom, because you can have weed and you could be casting in or over weed, and that could be a fulcrum. So as you pull, you might get 6 foot. You think, oh, it's lovely and clear, and then you wind in. But if you get 6 foot and think, oh, it's lovely and clear, and push the rod forward and it goes back 6 foot, all your lead's doing is going up and down in the weed as a fulcrum to your rod, weed, lead. You want direct contact with the ground at all times. You get that little slide, perfect, you're on. You might feel a bit of gravel, you might feel a bit of shingle, it might just be sand, it might be clay, it might be silt, it might be whatever. But if you can get near to that weed, but still keep in contact with the bottom and get that little slide, for me, they're the spots I look for. Over the last couple of years, I've become very, very happy with what I call my black mix. And it sort of started from trying to avoid birds. Now in the summer you get a lot of coot action, duck action, whatever. In the winter, obviously you get a lot of tufty action, which you don't want. So I've developed a sort of a spod mix, if you like. I do a lot of spodding. I do like boilie fishing, pure boilie, round a marker. I do like that. But obviously you're limited on range there, sort of anything over, I don't know, 12 wraps or whatever, and you're going all over the place. And I like to fish accurately because, as I said earlier, I like to fish spots. So I do like spodding. I don't like fishing at big range particularly, whatever, but I find spodding at any range, with this black mix, just gives me what I want on an exact spot. So it's a mix of, it's sort of pellet based, if you like. It's all mainline gear. I have, I think it's called a stick and bag mix. So it's micro pellet. I couldn't even tell you how small the smallest ones are. A mil, 2 mil, something like that. Proper small. Generally, they're tending towards black. There's a few brown ones in there and a very small amount of about, I'd say, 2 to 2.5 mil dark red ones. To this, I add 10 mil ISO fish, a handful of 15 mil ISO fish, and a few larger pellets, like response pellet, ISO fish response. I've been on this fish mix for, like I say, a couple of years now. I tested it originally when it first came out, and I really, really liked it. But I found if I was going for sessions, it would, because it's very active, it would turn a bit too quick for my liking. And then they brought it out in shelf life. And I'll be completely honest with you now, I only use shelf life. I turned my freezer off, my bait freezer, about a year ago, and I just use shelf life baits. I've got total and utter confidence with them. I can just leave them in the van. I mean, even now it's 30 degrees, but they're in a little lock, not lock, a little, just a big plastic box with a lid. There's all sorts in there. I just leave them in there. I'm more than happy to use these new shelf life. So that's my general mix, really. Everything's dark. Birds don't see it. But they can find it eventually, but it's not obvious. It's not in their face. And if I want to sparkle it up, if I want it to be more obvious to the fish, I just chuck a can of corn or a couple of cans of corn over the top of it. And also, I do like a growler, a tiger, especially in here because there's an awful lot of tension here. So I've got a bucket of tigers with me. I've got a backup bucket in the motor. One of the rods out there is just on pure tiger. Like I say, just to avoid the tench, really. But tigers, you can't really go wrong in summer with a growler. So they're my two baits that I use for most of my fishing. I mean, tigers are great if you can use them. A lot of lakes won't let you use them, so I just use the black mix. And over the top, I've got various sizes of the fish meal pop-ups. I've got some extra hard ones in 18 mil. But a lot of the time I use these little 12 mil, 12, 13 mil, something like that versions. If I'm using corn in the mix, I put a bit of plastic corn just to top the boilie off with. But it's all quite simple, and it's something that's just worked for me over and over and over again. It's a lot easier than carrying great big buckets full of particles around. Gives them a good food source without putting too much out there. Yeah, I'm just proper happy with it. I've got so many fish over the last few years, or couple of years, using that fish meal. That is my bait of choice now, and it's nice to be settled on something, isn't it? To not think, oh, what am I going to use here? What am I going to use there? Everywhere I go. I've just done 2 days and nights at Linear. We did a boys v girls charity match for PTSD. And that's the sort of lake where you think about your bait before you go. People use worm, people use little bits and chops and this and whatever. I just used that. I just took a bigger bucket, like a very big bucket, of what I call the black mix, and we caught loads on it, up to 36 pounds. I think me and the missus had 9 between us or something. It just works wherever it goes. It smells, it's fishy, it stinks like carp bait, and I love it. Okay, that's us all sorted. I can pop the bivvy over the rest of it if need be. I don't know if I'm going to bother. It's so hot at the moment, sticky, and absolutely the worst carp fishing conditions you can imagine. But, however, we may succeed. Who knows? Who knows? Rods are still out there. Haven't redone them. Don't really need to. I was happy with how everything went out. We've seen one fish today, just plumed up in a big plume of bubbles come up, and he come out the weed close in and then bow waved off. He did go in the right direction. But yeah, if we're going to get a bite, to be honest, not yet, but in an hour or two until, well, I don't know, 9 in the morning. Did have my bites last week from this lake at midday and 3 in the afternoon, but it wasn't 30 degrees. It was Storm Floris or Flora, or I don't know what else she was called. It was howling winds and perfect conditions, but it's not today. But never mind, we're here, we're angling, we're not going to catch them at home. Baits are in the water. If they're here, fairly confident we might get a bite. Sort of. But we are going to have fish, because the big pan's here, and we're just about to have a side of salmon. Well, not we. Cameraman's got a rustler's burger. Jesus Christ. I thought only prisoners ate rustler's burgers, but that's what he's got. But I've got a side of salmon, fresh prawns and asparagus. Look at me, eh? Posh as. And hopefully we can get carp. And as soon as we do, you will all know about it. But until then, it's dinner time. Morning. Well, nothing to report on the fish front on the bank, but I have seen quite a few now. A lot of UFOs, as I call them, unidentified fishy objects. Could be carp, but I've seen a couple or 3 or whatever definite carp right on the left-hand zone where the 2 rods are in that weed. And I've had a few liners, and I sort of think that I should have had a bite by now with the amount of activity that's out there. So now it's that period of the morning when you're having doubts. You're thinking, is everything right? Is everything presented as it should be? Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? I got the location right. They are here. The other swim that was on my mind, which is up there, I've been standing down the front there looking. I haven't seen anything up there, but I've seen carp for definite in the zone where I'm fishing. Just starting to get, there's nagging doubts why I had a bite. But I generally always have them right up until I get a bite. So I don't know. We shall see how the morning progresses. Oh, and it's a good job I didn't sleep out under the stars last night like I was going to, because it tipped down with rain. We had a little shower just after dark, and I thought, oh, I could have suffered that. And then sometime in the night, not heavy rain, but it rained quite consistently for a few hours. So I'd have been scrabbling about trying to get the bivvy up, but luckily I'd already got it up, so I slept well. But didn't get disturbed by any carp, so I don't know. We might have to make some changes in a bit. Who knows? Okay, I am going to do this 3rd rod. I've checked I brought in the one off the far bank, which was fishing perfectly, but I haven't seen any fish over there. Everything I've seen, it's been quite an active morning with UFOs and the odd definite carp. In that area that I'm fishing, I was mystified that I hadn't had a bite until I brought that middle rod in, and it wasn't what I imagined at all. It was horrible silkweed, coated in silkweed. Silkweed's really deceptive weed. If you've just got, like I did yesterday, a lead and a braided rod, it can feel really smooth, it can feel like really nice ground. A bit of a schoolboy error, if I'm honest, that I didn't put a rig out there. The ideal way, if you think the silkweed, is to put a rig with a bait, like as if you're fishing, leave it 15 minutes, let it settle in, and then bring it in, and then you're more likely to hook stuff if it's there. I didn't do that. I should have done that. Should have, would have, could have, didn't. And I wish I had, because that rod, I've had a lot of liners on and fish showing over. It wasn't fishing, I don't think, let alone as good as I wanted it to. The left hand rod I'm just about to bring in was half firmer, and I could feel gravel. And I don't know if I'm either going to be very disappointed at my own angling ability because I didn't put a rig out there and try the bottom. That's if it's covered in silkweed. Or if it comes in perfectly, I'm going to be mystified why I haven't had a bite. But location was spot on, but I don't think that fine line, you know, that last 1% it definitely weren't right on the middle rod. So we're just about to find out how badly I did, and I've got this horrible feeling it won't be good. So what I'm doing is, because I'm using fluoro, which is hard to the bottom, I'm trying to get as much up as possible so that I can whip it off the spot. I mean, it is going to drag along the bottom a little bit, so I'm going to get more than I was fishing over, but I'm trying to get the line higher, and then I'm going to strike him up and get him straight in to see. Now, that don't feel nowhere near as bad as that middle rod did. Nowhere near as bad. See, this is totally different. This has got a tiny piece of weed on, which is fresh green weed. It's not even silkweed. It's just a ickle bit of, not really sure what that is. It's not Canadian, but it's not a problem, I'll tell you that. That is not a problem. So this one was fishing, so I am mystified why I haven't had a bite on that one. I really am. So what I'm going to do, which I've already done to the other two, is I'm going to make a change. So, with this rig I use, I can literally, it's a Ronny on a stiff boom, I can just swap them bottom growlers for a buoyant bait, and it will just sit as a pop-up, just in case that was the problem. Really don't know why that hasn't gone though. They could have found that easy enough. And they've been there. One fish showed this morning, bang smack on top of this rod. I mean, maybe it's not bite time yet, but usually when it's active time, it's bite time. The active time was a couple of hours ago. So yeah, this one was doing all right. Should have had a fish. Morning's gone, it's mid-afternoon, it is scorching, it's way over 30 degrees. Why I'm moving in these conditions at this time of day, I do not know. Well, I do know, because I don't think it's happening here. Fish were here, but I'm not too keen on the bottom here. I've been on the opposite side into a little swim where I'd seen fish this morning, looks nicer. And I've been down and had a look at the plateau where I caught last week, and I've seen two fish out there, and there's like a weed bed on the side of the plateau, and I've seen two cruising out through there. So wherever we end up, it's on that side of the lake. So it's to that side of the lake we go. Ho 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 and all that. 1, 2, speed 3. Whoom, ta-da. Right, here we are, relocated. Now, it looks beautiful out there. We've got a summer easterly, which is one of the easterlies and southeasterlies, probably the best winds in summer. I can't believe I'm not actually fishing on it as such. It's coming in a bit, but it's going up that way a lot more to where I fancied the other swim, the second swim I fancied. However, out here, this is a swim that I fished last week. I do know this swim. I'm new on this lake, but this swim I do know. I've got all my spots marked down. Fished in here last week, had 2 and lost 1. There's a great big weed bed out there, and on the right of the big, it's like a bistalk bed, so it's keeping the water flat out there. And on the right of it is a plateau, and there's a spot on the plateau where I can get bites. I know I can get bites if they're in a feeding mood. As I first came in here, stood here and had a look, I looked out the weed bed and a big old black back just lifted up like that, and then another one. I've been sat here with my bins, trained out there. There's loads of fish in there. I mean, they're no good to me at the moment doing whatever it is they're doing. They're just sunbathing. It's 32, 33 degrees. They're sat in the weed, but I've got 2 rigs out there on my magic spots on the plateau right next to the weed. So if at any stage they decide they're going to come out and feed, I'm on the money, I reckon. So I've chosen this one rather than the other one, which probably would look better in the wind. But this looks better because it's full of carp. And at the end of the day, we're here to catch carp, aren't we? So all we've got to do now is catch a carp. But we're trying. We are trying. Right, let's talk rigs. I'm not very riggy sort of person. I tend to find something I like and stick with it. And this is something I like, so I've stuck with it. Now, to me, it seems quite straightforward, and I know Ronny rig, and I know you've seen Ronny rig, everyone talks about Ronny rigs. But a lot of people, when they see my rigs, and Ian, the cameraman over there, said exactly the same as a lot of people say, oh, it's a little bit different. And all of my rigs incorporate a short hair. So I have a sliding ring, and then I have an old-fashioned sort of looped hair to mount my bait on, with a degree of separation between the hook and the bottom of the bait, which I think gives everything, it's just like another hinge, that little bit of separation. I don't like having baits tight against the back of a shank. In my mind, if that's sucked in and blown out, it's going out back of the bend first, following the bait, which is the hook's around the wrong way. And I just think with that extra hinge, there's more chance of that revolving in the mouth and taking hold. And I also always fish my stop bead on any of my rigs right at the very top of the bend. Now, when I have published this rig or something similar in the past on like social media, I've even had people say to me, oh, you got the bead in the wrong place, which did make me laugh, because there isn't a right and a wrong. Obviously what they meant was a different place, but it's not the wrong place. For me, it's the right place. So when it's presented on the bottom, the bait is above the hook. If a fish comes down and sucks it in, the hook is following the bait, the volume, the size of the bait into the mouth. And then obviously it comes back down the shank. It's got that extra hinge, extra movement. It's on a flexi-link swivel, so there's bits moving around everywhere, spins all over the place. To tie it, I use the heavy tungsten Gardner Ronny sleeves, because they make changing the hooks so simple. You just slide them up, and the swivel's got a little hook on it, and you just pop a new hook on and then slide the tungsten sleeve back down, replace your hair and your little stop, and you're good to go. More recently, I've changed, I nearly always use coated braid, but not so long ago I did one of them underwater things. And I saw what my coated braid looked like in clear water, and it scared me. So I'm now using, it's called Tiger Link. It's a fluorocarbon, so it's not a stiff link, it's a stiffish link. It's like a 30-pound fluorocarbon. It has give in it, as you can see, but it is fairly stiff. But it's totally invisible on the bottom, and I've coupled that with a fluorocarbon leader so that nothing, as it lays on the bottom, if I'm fishing over, like I am now, over a sort of shiny plateau with fairly clear water, there's nothing really visible there apart from, if you've got really good eyesight, the hook and hopefully the bait. if I'm presented as I want to be. So there we go. That is my rig, and I swap and change this. You know, I'll put tigers on and use it on the bottom. I'll use a bottom bait. I'll use a wafter. I'll use a pop up, whatever. But the rig doesn't really change. And if I use a bottom bait, I still use the heavy tungsten. I just think, you know, they've got to give it a bit of a to get that off the bottom and into their mouth. I know how strong the suction from a carp is unbelievable. So I'm happy to use that, whatever. I just change the bait, everything else stays the same. My rig. I like it a lot. Right, well, I would say we're all settled into the new swim, but we're not. There's just, you can see behind the camera, there's just stuff everywhere. Although my cameraman does keep tidying up for me, which is a bit weird. Quite nice, quite like it. We haven't really, I mean, the fishing today, there's been a lot of actual angling going on because it's just been brutally hot. We've been moving swim from one side to the other, which has been a slow process because I've managed to smash me Achilles tendon a few weeks ago, so it's all limpy. But we've got here, the rods are out, I baited up. I'm totally happy. I like this swim, I know this swim. Everything's fishing perfectly, they're all on spots, it's all like absolutely cock on. It just depends whether those fish come out of that weed and decide to feed, or whether in the, I mean, it's, you know, it's 20 degrees tonight, it's going to be in the night, I think that's the low, whether they just stay in there. But I think, you know, quite often this time of year, as it gets into the night, the oxygen levels around weed change drastically and the fish move out. That's what we're sort of bargaining on, that they come out, they know the spots they feed on. You know, I can tell which spots they feed on because there's blanket weed or silkweed over most of it. The spots I caught from only last week, they're crystal clear, that's where they feed. Everything's in place, basically. If they leave that weed bed, I'm catching them. If they don't, well, I'm not. But yeah, so rest of the evening we're going to have a bit of grub, get the cookers out. I've got pork chops tonight, pork chops, asparagus and something else, but I can't remember what it is. Something nice anyway. Yeah, might even have a cheeky beer before I go to bed, get the house up, watch the sunset, wait for the rods to rip off, and as soon as they do, you'll be the first to know about it. And there we go, 37 pound Nene Valley Common. Absolutely beautiful. Very, very lively as well. He's been hard work to trick because obviously the conditions have been brutal, and I lost one this morning which didn't please me at all, and then they started fizzing over the spot in that bright sunshine, and along he came. I think we're going to only have a quick look at him because he just wants to go back. And there he is. Lovely jubbly. What a way to end what's been a lovely little trip. 2 days and nights on the bank. Got some nice footage, summer special. We've got 37 pound Nene Valley Common to end with. So thank you all very, very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Hurrah! Whoa! And away.